and all the what artists enjoy that he really enjoys.
He particularly likes certain genres of films, such as horror films, including the Friday the 13th series, Elizabeth Taylor films, and westerns.
At some stage, he decided that the actresses and actors in North Korea were not very good. And so he said, I would like to have Miss Chae, who is one of the more noted actresses in South Korea, here to make movies. And so they kidnapped her.
In 1978, Chae Yoon-hee is kidnapped by North Korean agents. When she arrives in North Korea, she is greeted by the dear leader himself.
There was a voice. Welcome to North Korea. I am Kim Iyong Yeil. I felt I was now to be killed. I felt as if all my blood fell down to my feet.
6 months later, Miss Chae's husband, the renowned film director Shin Sang-ok, is also kidnapped. Over the next 3 years, they are forced to make films for Kim Jong-il, including a North Korean version of Godzilla.
We had money and all kinds of conveniences, but we didn't have freedom. I was 60 then. I couldn't die there.
Shin and Chae eventually escape, but the practice of kidnapping becomes an integral part of Kim's strategy for destabilizing his enemies. Between 1977 and 1983, several Japanese citizens vanish without a trace.
The North Koreans said we needed Japanese role models so that we could learn from them how to behave like Japanese and how to sound like Japanese when we spoke.
The purpose is for North Korean agents to pose as Japanese, thus providing cover and deniability while engaging in acts of sabotage against South Korea. By the mid-1980s, South Korea is the model of a modern capitalist nation. Its booming economy is a constant source of resentment to Kim, whose own economy is on the brink of disaster. Adding insult to injury, Seoul is internationally recognized as a world-class city when it is designated as host of the 1988 Olympics. Determined to intimidate participants and disrupt the Games, North Korea turns to its strategy of abduction and sabotage to perpetrate an act of terrorism, allegedly at the direction of Kim Jong-il.
5858 just disappeared.
In 1987, 2 North Korean agents posing as Japanese tourists plant a bomb on board a Korean Airlines flight headed to Seoul. Soon after they deplane at a stopover, the bomb explodes, killing 115 people. The capture of 25-year-old Kim Hyun-hee is a sensation. When asked why she did it, Kim Hyun-hee claims that she was brainwashed from early childhood to worship and obey the great and dear leaders of North Korea. To many, this sounds far-fetched. But to those who have experienced North Korea's system of indoctrination, it has the ring of truth.
어렸을 때 진짜 유치원 때부터 그런 걸 배워요. 이렇게
In kindergarten, we start learning about Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung's birthdays. On those days, they give candies and other gifts, and there are portraits of them. And then we bow in front of them and say, "Thank you, General Kim Il-sung." And then we take the gifts.
미국은 늑대.
As I grew up, we learned that the U.S. is the American imperialist wolf. We were taught that American missionaries came to Korea and they committed all kinds of barbarous acts. And so if somebody stole an apple, then the missionaries caught the child and then burned on his forehead the word thief with acid. So people in North Korea think Americans are cannibals. And young children, when they learn this stuff, they think it's real history.
어렸을 땐 몰랐어요.
I didn't know anything about the outside world. I thought North Korea was the best place in the whole world, a paradise.
If you are brainwashed into thinking that you are living in the world's best country and you have no alternative sources of information, then it is much more possible for the dictator to control you.
What Kim Jong-il fears most is his people getting to know the outside world. As people get to know about the outside world, he will come crashing down.
As the 1980s end, the Soviet Empire begins to crumble. Communist regimes throughout Eastern Europe are toppled. The Berlin Wall is torn down. And finally, the USSR dissolves. Yet North Korea seems impervious to this turning of the tide. In fact, Kim Il-sung uses the collapse of communism elsewhere to further rally support for his ideology of independence.
The North Koreans did not see Kim Il-sung as repressive. He was always held up as the heroic leader who was fending off these evil influences from outside, and that only by supporting him fully could the North Koreans win full independence.
Increasingly isolated in an ever more hostile world, Kim Jong-il, now head of the military, looks for options to ensure the security of his father's regime. He turns to a nuclear weapons program begun in the early 1980s. Despite Kim's denials, U.S. intelligence has confirmed its existence. It will soon lead North Korea to the brink of a full-scale war with the United States. On the morning of June 16, 1994, President Bill Clinton calls together his top advisors for what amounts to a war council. Plans for the deployment of a massive military force to South Korea are on the table. Satellite photos have revealed compelling evidence that North Korea is attempting to build a nuclear bomb.
We were preparing for the possibility of war in a very serious way, planning, first of all, for a strike on the nuclear complex, but secondly, for the war that could well have resulted had the North Koreans launched an invasion of South Korea. That all looked very, very real to us at the time.
The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 is the most dangerous moment the world has seen. I think 1994 is the second.
In fact, as Secretary of Defense Perry was briefing President Clinton in the Oval Office on a reinforcement plan at the very moment that former President Carter, Jimmy Carter, called President Clinton from Pyongyang and said, "Hold on, I've been talking to Kim Il-sung, and maybe there's some negotiated agreement that could be reached."
President Carter has gone to Pyongyang to try to negotiate a diplomatic solution to the crisis.
It is now past midnight Friday morning in North Korea. And
he appears on CNN to announce his achievement.
President Kim Il-sung has committed himself to...
Carter saved Clinton's bacon because the Clinton administration had the idea that pressure is the only way you can deal with a problem like this. They had no understanding of North Korean psychology, which is that simply made them more determined to resist the pressure and show that they would not be cowed down by the mighty superpower.
Carter has averted a military showdown. In exchange for oil and other sources of energy and the eventual normalization of relations with the United States, the North Koreans agreed to freeze their nuclear program. But while the terms of the agreement are being negotiated, an unexpected event rocks North Korea. Kim Il-sung suddenly dies of a heart attack. The shock is felt even by those aware of his abuses who have escaped to the south.
When Kim Il-sung died, I wept. I really mourned. We couldn't believe it. He seemed immortal. Many died.